So how do we put this battle scenario into perspective? One with China, two with Pakistan, and three with Turkey in terms of air power. Because they would learn something about the Air Force हमारे बारे में. And जो एक कहावत है, तो everybody saying यार अभी तो 10% भी नहीं यूज करा Air Force ने. Is that something that you would stand by, sir?
Okay, I'll start with the last question first. There are three things आपने पूछा. One is fifth generation के बारे में. दूसरा external support from China, Turkey on Pakistan, Pakistani air power, and the dynamics of these three countries and their relations with India vis-a-vis air power. And last one you have asked was on that we have only used about 10%. Okay, so my estimate is not even a back of the envelope calculation, but fairly involved answer to this. It is even way lesser than 10%. Okay, so Air Forces, the kind of capacity it would have, you just have to look at the maths of an exercise called Gagan Shakti conducted, I think 2019, if I am not too wrong, 19 or so, 19 or 20, I think 2021, yeah, 20. We flew 9,000 fighter sorties in 10 days where we didn't see, when you plan for sorties, you plan at a certain rate, the number of sorties you will fly per aircraft. These are all figures in open domain, published open domain figures. I never talk about classified numbers. I will never talk about what I know, because I can't talk about these things. I am talking about purely numbers which you can pick off from the public domain. 9,000 sorties plus, and we didn't fly our full rate we are capable of. But so this is an enormous capacity, but is it enough when you look at adversaries? But after those 9,000 sorties, most certainly the rate would keep falling as the war extends or as a conflict extends, which is the reality of it. So it's always a challenge on the military. Where do you cap the upper end of the fight? That was always a challenge. In 65, it was a challenge because our aim was to last out the war. We had actually planned for a long duration war. Pakistan hadn't and ran into trouble. We could have easily outlasted them. So also in 71. So that is our biggest deterrent strength, which remains, that we can outlast them. There is no question in that. At the end, we will prevail. But the smart thing to do it is with as efficiently and with as less cost as possible. And that is where the real challenge lies, that when you do not have enough capacity, you are constrained. You're constrained by resources. You're constrained to fight with what you have, like you said, आपने जो शुरू में कहा है, जो है उसी के साथ लड़ें. तो ये बात हमें समझना पड़ेगा कि कैपेसिटी बहुत होता है. So that is the first question answered. Second question I will go into is your first question of fifth gen. Fifth gen is a reality. हमारे Air Force, Chinese Air Force, incidentally, till Gulf War, was one of the largest air forces. It still is one of the largest air forces in the world. But the numbers were so large but they were all old platforms, third generation platforms. Platforms which they had in huge numbers. They had MiG-15, MiG-19s, MiG-21s in huge numbers, because they, as a national strategy, they believed in deterrence of numbers. Misplaced, but that's a fact. Gulf War, they looked at Gulf War very closely. There's a book called Unrestricted Warfare by two PLAF. Incidentally, they are Air Force colonels who wrote about unrestricted warfare. That changed China's outlook to warfare and how it looked at air power. China set about changing on how it will enhance its air power. Has done it systematically, and I give it enormous credit to its strategic outlook and the way it planned and went about upgrading its air force. So the fact is, we know what fifth generation is. They are modern capabilities. Basically, it आपको, we are all aware, first generation, second generation. These are all technology definitions, benchmark of a fighter plane, of any aerial platform actually, but usually associated with fighter planes and possibly bombers. तो इसमें क्या होता है, the higher the technological benchmark, that means higher the generation, you expect more and more modern day capabilities and future capabilities packed into it. Electronic warfare, self-defense capabilities, stealth capabilities, long-range capabilities, efficient engineering, low radar signature, low thermal signature, ability to carry weapons internally, long unfueled range. So these are no definite benchmarks, but amongst what is prevalent, that is how. So our fighter fleet is about 4.5 generation, and fourth generation can get upgraded a little bit. You can, like I said, you can make it 4.5 generations because some modern changes you can do along the way. But हर एक fighter की एक limit होती है of how much of modifications you can do on it. Fifth generation fighters are the ones which are currently, a lot of them are in use. It started off with the F-22, the F-35, the Chinese versions. The Russian Su-57 technically is a 4.5 generation fighter, though in some cases they consider it fifth generation as well. So these are amorphous. The point is, it is the capability of the platform. Hindustan ke liye, it is not just about fifth generation. Certainly, it is about fifth generation when it comes to the need to upgrade your inventory ka profile. But हमारा ज्यादा problem है the inventory of numbers जो हम fill नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. 20 साल हो गए. That number matters, especially when you see the numbers increase of the PLAF and the PAF and qualitative increase. So from fourth generation fighters, PAF will already get a fifth generation fighter even before our first fifth generation fighter starts flying. By the time our fifth generation fighter goes into mass production 10 years later, by then you will have Chinese sixth generation fighter already operational in Tibet. So we have already lost the advantage. But where the advantage we can neutralize a bit is fill the numbers quickly with high-end platforms as within whatever is available. It does not matter. देखिए, weapon choice I will not subscribe to. Every country has its plus and minus. आप फ्रांस जाइए, आप रशिया जाइए, आप US जाइए. So at the end of the day, every platform we have taken has been out of geopolitical compulsions driving the purchase or driving your choices of purchase. तो जो भी हम choice करेंगे will be a geopolitical choice for the nation. So it is not just the Indian Air Force's choice. This we must get clear. But the point is, whatever be the choice, my only request is to the policymakers is make that choice quickly. Find ways and means to start filling this gap of numbers so that it is not a bucket जिसका आप जितना भी पानी डालते जाओ लेवल कम होता जा रहा है because छेद बड़ा हो गया है.
जी.
That is the point we need to remember. So that is one aspect. Other aspect is on technology. We have to find ways and means because हमारे research and R&D, we are a long way behind. Fact is, we are behind in this, but it needs the government to recognize it and now take active top-down measures to improve it. Air Force can't do it alone. It's as simple as that. And the last question, most important, Chinese, PAF, Turkey, China. I've been saying, apart from the strategic partnership, China and Pakistan has been carrying out joint Air Force exercises since the year 2011 called Exercise Shahin. Fact of it is, Pakistan's aviation industry, Kamra Aerospace Complex, is standing and thriving because of active Chinese support right through. They have built platforms together. Yes, Pakistan does the lower end of the scale, tech scale, in the sense that it does the airframe work, but the engines and the specialist equipment come from the Chinese. So it's a perfect trade-off. So the JF-17 is a product of that. So there has been active engagement of the Chinese aviation industry with the Pakistani aviation industry to make it a robust aviation industry, which both are invested in, and as well for the future. Now it is diversifying. What is the important thing to note is that operationally 2011 से ये दोनों देश हर साल almost to 2023 तक they have done 11 exercises together. 11 or 10, I forget the exact figure. And the last exercise in 2023, I think Shaheen 11, if I'm not wrong. Key aspect was interoperability of their platforms. So they have flown JF-17s and ZDKs cross-paired as well and flown. So it is a back, you scratch my back, I scratch your back situation. Perfect. The Chinese are getting expertise in tactics, training, operational skills, operational modern day combat operational employments, and intelligence on Indian air power. Pakistan is benefiting from the Chinese supply chain, from their weapons, from their expertise. Turkey has jumped into this game in an entirely different perspective. It is a nation, their leadership is very centered on his own survival and his being, but he is playing smart geopolitics. देखिए टर्की नेटो के साथ बहुत दिन से रहा इन द होप ऑफ बीइंग एक्सेप्टेड इन द यूरोपियन यूनियन. यूरोप ने क्या किया, इस्लामिक नेशन है, इसने टर्की को नहीं लिया ईयू में बट नेटो में लिया. दैट मींस आई विल यूज योर मिलिट्री बट आई विल नॉट एब्सॉर्ब यू इन द इकोनॉमिक fora of the European Union. So Turkey at some point took a decision 2000 mid 2010s mein down the line and went its own way. And Erdogan became a strong man. It became a leader in an Islamic nation. So naturally, now there was coincidence with Pakistan and Turkey. So now it has become an alternative axis of power. Turkey has tasted blood in its weapon industry in Europe. Ukraine war में यहाँ पे एक और चांस मिल गया. So because देखिए, it is both China and Turkey are benefiting, and in a strange way, even the US arms industry is benefiting. Because this has become live testing ground. You are getting the chap of combat proven equipment. So there will be a lot of myth building in this. But professionals, I'm sure the Indian Air Force and all professional people who watch air power will go into more details and put the two aside and get into specifics.
Of course, of course.
So you're right. In a way, it is China and Turkey's war as well.
I mean,